all you literary legends and luminaries. I'm Julie and welcome to Booksmart. The book I have for you today is Three Women by Lisa Taddeo. I read the back of this book and then saw the pages and pages of praise from critics and other writers. Multiple mentions comparing it to In Cold Blood. Taddeo spent 8 years researching her three subjects, three different women regarding desire, sex, and what it means to be a woman. I thought, I'm sold. I was even more enthralled with the author's note at the beginning, that she used court documents and news articles. Maybe this is like In Cold Blood. I'm all in. And I loved it at first. In her prologue, Taddeo begins with a story about her mother, about a man who followed her to work and would masturbate as he walked behind her. It was Italy in the 1960s. Her mother is dead now, so Taddeo can't ask her mother why she allowed it to continue. This then segues into a discussion on desire. Men's desires are different than women's. They will forfeit presidencies for illicit acts. So she thought she would write about men's desires, then found them one-dimensional, sexually motivated. She turned to women instead. Let me read to you why. She writes, there was complexity and beauty and violence even in the way the women experienced the same event. In these ways and more, it was the female parts of an interlude that, in my eyes, came to stand for the whole of what longing in America looks like. Of course, female desire can be just as bullish as male desire, and when desire was propulsive, when it was looking for an end it could control, my interest waned. But the stories wherein desire was something that could not be controlled, when the object of desire dictated the narrative, that was where I found the most magnificence, the most pain. It resembled pedaling a bicycle backward, the agony and futility, and finally, the entry into another world altogether. As the title suggests, Taddeo focuses on three different women. Maggie, a high school student who has an affair with her married teacher. Lena, a separated housewife who reconnects with an old lover who is married. Sloane, a successful restaurant owner who has sex with other men and women while her husband watches. Quite the variety, so I initially thought. In the author's note, Taddeo even tells us that she moved to live near a couple of them to fully immerse herself in their day-to-day lives. She structures the stories by going back and forth between them. Each one gets a chapter, then she starts rotating between them, with Sloane having the fewest chapters, which I also enjoyed at first. Let me begin with Maggie's story. This takes place in North Dakota. She is the high school student who was seduced by her English teacher. I'm putting all the blame on Aaron, the teacher, because he was older and her teacher. At first, it may have seemed innocuous. A teacher checking in with a student who confided that her home life wasn't all that great. But he persistently texts her, asking about her day. It then progresses. My heart breaks for Maggie because I could relate to every single feeling she had, except my love-struck heart was never for a teacher. It was always for just your run-of-the-mill teenage boy. How she made choices to accommodate Aaron, how she didn't live her life, limiting herself because of him. Oh my God, I was her, even though I had never experienced any sort of feelings for a teacher or even a professor for that matter. And of course, Aaron is married with children because he's that piece of crap. While they don't have intercourse, they do engage in plenty of sexual activity. He tells her his wife found the text messages. It's over. She graduates, goes off to college, but cannot get over her teacher. She drops out, becomes a waitress, while Aaron becomes Teacher of the Year. I forget who tells her this, but it resonates with her. She probably wasn't the first, and she probably won't be the last fabulous Teacher of the Year has done this to. She presses charges. Google the story if you want because it made the news. I won't spoil the ending, although you can probably infer what happens based on my tone. I couldn't wait to get back to the chapters on Maggie's story because it was riveting and heartbreaking, and you wanted to hug Maggie and tell her, don't you dare throw your future away for that predatory dumb shit. Maggie's story is worth the book. In fact, her experience could have been a book on its own. The other two stories I'm not so passionate about. Part of the reason is because as the book continued, I started getting them mixed up because I couldn't tell the difference between them. Although on the surface, they were two very different stories. Lena is the unhappily married housewife whose husband refuses to kiss her. She's been married for 10 years and there's zero romance. Pretty common. Her high school boyfriend, Aiden, was the love of her life, but it ended very badly. She is drugged and raped by 3 guys in high school. Of course, the rumor mill twists it that she's just a slut and had sex with 3 guys at a party, so Aiden breaks up with her. Time passes. Lena is now longing for romance, and Aiden connects with her on Facebook. She gets up the nerve to tell her husband she wants a separation. She lost weight, she put forth an effort, and for what? A romanticless marriage. No more. I'm so on Lena's side right now. I'm with her. Her excitement for her rendezvous and how she feels about it. She acknowledges he's married, but so what? We have no context of his marriage, but it doesn't sound like he ever plans on getting a divorce. So at first, I'm behind her excitement, her anticipation. Let me read you how Taddeo captures this excitement and what she says about it. For some women, preparing to meet a lover is nearly as hallowed a time as the actual meeting. In some cases, it's better because at length the lover leaves or someone loses interest, but the tender moments of anticipation remain. Like the way Lena can more easily remember the beauty of snow falling than the gray slush that lingers. That depicts it perfectly. This is what is keeping her going. I remember an episode of My So-Called Life when Angela Chase is talking about her obsession with Jordan Catalano. Even though she knows there's very little chance of anything materializing, she says something about how that's what keeps her going. I was a senior in high school when that show came out, and I thought, oh my goodness, someone thinks the way I do. And so I understand Lena. I understand what's happening, and I'm all for her separation. Enough is enough. But as Lena's story progresses, I'm shaking my head. What is she doing? Aiden is fully in charge. Most of their sex occurs in cars. It's obvious he's using her just for sex, yet Aiden has become Lena's world. She drops everything for him. The second he texts, she's calling for babysitters. What are you doing? I get the first couple of times, but now I'm not sympathizing with her situation. You're a grown woman with 2 kids and you're revolving your entire life around some douchebag who's just using you. I can't take it. I'm even grimacing while I'm reading it. It's that bad. Plus, I'm waiting for the legal ramifications. Does the wife find out and sue? Because that has happened. Does someone die? Does something dreadful happen? Since that is what I was thinking based on the author's note. Nope. Don't think like I did. The only legal criminal stuff is in Maggie's story. So that was a bit of a letdown to me. Then we have Sloan, an independent woman who worked at a restaurant. She and the head chef, Richard, got together shortly after they married and bought a restaurant. They've been married for 4 or 5 years, and then Richard sets her up with another woman. She describes how one must be the appropriate amount of inebriated to engage in this. Once they're actively involved in the threesome, she wants out. Richard convinces her otherwise. This is how Sloan thinks of it. Even in the most complex of conjured realms, Sloan could not imagine a time machine convincing enough to take them back from this. Sloan eventually comes to enjoy fantasizing about her husband having sex with other women, as Richard likes to watch her have sex with other men and women. Then Sloan becomes a submissive. She compares this control to her eating disorder she developed in high school. In her mind, now her sleeping with other men and recording it or telling Richard all the details is on her terms. When she confides to her friend asks a very important question. Is this a way for you to be okay with your husband wanting you to sleep with other men? One of these men is a married man who works at the restaurant. Sloan assumed the wife knew. Wife did not. Sloan takes the blame even though it was Richard who organized it all. It's interesting to get inside her head at all that she wishes to say to Richard but doesn't. Talk about relatable. It's an amazing stream of consciousness page of the book. Then the wife says something that should have been said way at the beginning of the book, but is on the last few pages instead. You're the woman. Don't you know you're supposed to have the power? If this book is supposed to empower women, I'm not getting that theme at all. A little bit with Maggie's story and her courage to come forward, but Lena's and Sloan's story, not a chance. Part of the reason I get Lena's story mixed up with Sloan's is because sex is the driving force behind both of these stories. Let me forewarn you, there is graphic sex throughout. In the beginning, it seemed appropriate. The newness, the setting the stage, all those narrative pieces fit with the need for those details. But as the book progresses, I'm rolling my eyes because it's literally a play by play. First of all, I don't need every single detail. I'm smart enough to get the gist of it. Plus, I've already been given plenty of play-by-plays. I don't need another one. To me, the focus on such gratuitous details diminishes the story. It's like 90s Madonna. Remember Vogue? And then after that, it went downhill for a few years. Madonna released Justify My Love, which MTV refused to play because of the nudity. For the next 4 years or so, sex was Madonna's primary focus. Her sex book, her dominatrix image, it got old. It was no longer authentic. Not like her Papa Don't Preach days, which I still don't understand the controversy of that song. Even Like a Prayer had a profound message. It wouldn't be Madonna without causing controversy by adding the burning crosses in the video. But the constant focus on sex was eye-rolling. Enough already. It cheapens the strong message you're trying to relay to your audience. That's exactly what Taddeo does in her book. Not to mention, I'm wondering how Taddeo knows such intimate details. Was she in the room at the time? Did Lena and Sloane send reports to Taddeo after every sexual encounter? There's something a bit creepy and unsettling about that process, and I don't trust Taddeo's narrative choices. Was she hoping the sex would sell the book, since we absolutely know it does with the likes of 50 Shades of Grey? All it felt like at the end was gratuitous, which watered down, weakened, and cheapened the profound topic Taddeo was tackling in this book. But Taddeo is a beautiful writer. There are sentences and passages in the book that are so eloquent and perfect. Let me give you an example. She writes, "It's the nuances of desire that hold the truth of who we are at our rawest moments. I set out to register the heat and sting of female want so that men and other women might more easily comprehend before they condemn. Because it's the quotidian minutes of our lives that will go on forever, that will tell us who we are, who our neighbors and our mothers were when we were too diligent in thinking they were nothing like us." Beautiful. She does this throughout. You'll be reading along and suddenly a sentence or paragraph will leap out at you for its beauty and its meaning. Yet I still have issues with the book. Maggie's story didn't belong with Lena's and Sloane's. Maggie wasn't an adult when her story started. While Taddeo brings up Lena's and Sloane's past relationships and issues, it wasn't enough for me to look at the book as a whole and compare Maggie's experience with Lena's and Sloane's. It almost cheapens it with the way their stories end, not providing Maggie much hope for hers. Perhaps replacing either Lena or Sloane with a story that had a more fulfilling ending, if just to add another dimension to the overall book, would have vastly changed the overall book's theme. At the beginning, Taddeo wrote, "I am confident that these stories convey vital truths about women and desire." I hope not, because the way these stories end depresses me to think that this is what professional adults and mothers who are spending their time and passion on. Men who call the shots, which is what Sloane and Lena were both doing. They didn't have the epiphany that I hoped they would have. Lena didn't tell Aiden, "It's been fun, but this isn't what I want anymore." Sloane doesn't even make Richard take the heat. But maybe that's more the truth than what I wish the truth was. Taddeo writes, "And it's relatability that moves us to empathize." I agree, but empathy can also frustrate us. If we do see ourselves in Maggie, Lena, and Sloane, we're also wanting to save ourselves from such a world where love is conditional, where love won't make us do things we wouldn't do if we were happily single. I wanted to scream at Lena and Sloane to tell them to find a hobby they can be passionate about instead of men. I wanted to tell them there is more to life than relying on someone else for that happiness, that desire comes and goes and is fickle. I wanted to protect Maggie, to tell her not to ruin her life over a guy. And yet I can't. Just as no one could rescue me from all my relationship mistakes or those that weren't even relationships. I wouldn't have listened to anyone anyway. All of that wasted time and energy that I could have been doing something much more fulfilling and productive that would have gotten me somewhere. Ultimately, the book provoked a passionate response from me and made me think about my own life and decisions. In my world, that's a great book, even if I didn't like it. My goal at Book Smart is to get a little bit smarter, one book at a time.